Hello and welcome to Brodual. Today we have Diverse Skyrim. This is a mod that adds over 100 new NPCs to the game, with the aim of increasing diversity. It's important to note that the mod doesn't actually increase the population of Skyrim, so you won't see more NPCs around you, but instead just more types of NPCs. Skyrim assigns certain NPCs to each faction, and then when it comes time to spawn them in, it randomly selects from that group. So using previous Elder Scrolls games, a bit of the lore and also a bit of common sense, the author has expanded on the pool of NPCs the game gets to choose from. It probably also goes more in depth than you might think. As an example, let's take a look at the Imperial Legion. It's still a faction that's heavily dominated by male Imperials, Nords and Bretons. However, they'll now be joined by the Dunmer, who feel like they've been pushed to the edge of Skyrim society by the Stormcloaks. This also builds on the growing resentment between the Nords and the Dunmer, seen in places like Windhelm. It's also mentioned that people's daughters are out fighting in the Legion, but none can be found in the lower ranks in Skyrim. So the mod adds them, and they mostly consist of Imperials and Nords. And finally, Orcs are also said to be highly praised in the Legion for their ferocity in battle, but again they aren't represented at all in Skyrim, so the mod fixes that too. As I said, the mod ensures the expected balance of race and gender. As a rough estimate, for every one Dunmer the mod adds, it also adds 10 of the original 3 races. And then of those 10, maybe 1 or less is female. So you aren't all of a sudden going to see full female battalions or ones made up entirely of Orcs or Dark Elves. This is still Skyrim after all. Their appearances were also chosen carefully. The Legion is assumed to have formal and strict traditions when it comes to things like war paint and facial hair, so they'll either be clean shaven or come with a fully grown beard. However, the proud Bretons prefer a moustache, and Orcs are allowed any type of facial hair. As long as they continue to smash the Legion's enemies with such might, the Orcs get a free pass. So some things are definitely assumed by the mod, but it makes sense that they wouldn't hold the Orcs to the same standard as they would the human races. Similar changes can also be seen across several other factions, including the Stormcloaks, Vampires, the Vigilants of Stendarr, Hunters, Warlocks and the City Guards. Every faction is unique and the types of NPCs were chosen carefully. So for the Stormcloaks, on top of many more unique looking Nords, the only additional race will be Redguards. As part of the same treaty that banned the worship of Talos, a large part of Hammerfell was handed over from the Empire to the Aldmeri Dominion. Many Redguards in Hammerfell saw this as betrayal and have built up resentment against the Empire, so it only makes sense that they're supported in any way against the Legion. The Redguards are skilled fighters and you know what they say about the enemy of your enemy. They also have no intention of taking over Skyrim, so it fits the Stormcloak narrative of Skyrim belonging to the Nords, and we find it unlikely they'd refuse their help. However, if you disagree, the mod also comes with an optional Nord-only Stormcloak version, which will only include the new Nord appearances. The Stormcloaks are also less strict in their code of conduct, so expect a wider variety of war paint and facial hair. For Vampires, the mod opens the faction up to include every race. In vanilla they only come as Nords, Bretons, Dark Elves and High Elves, despite every race being susceptible to vampirism. Nords will still be by far the most common type of vampire, but you can now occasionally stumble upon one of the rarer races. This will depend on their prevalence in Skyrim and their other racial attributes. For example, Khajiits are an odd sight in Skyrim as it is, so stumbling upon a Khajiiti vampire would be extremely rare, but it definitely can happen. Wood Elves are probably even more rare, given their high natural resistance to disease. Similar racial gaps have also been filled in Hunters and Fishermen. There's now a rare chance you'll find the odd Orcish or Argonian Hunter, instead of just the endless stream of Nords and Wood Elves. For some factions, the lack of diversity isn't in their race, but in their appearance. This is especially noticeable in the Vigilants of Stendarr and the City Guards. With more NPCs to choose from, you're now less likely to see the same or similar faces twice. Even slight variations in head and body shape, as well as things like hair and eye colour, work really well alongside an open-faced guard helmet mod, which we also recommend you install. For Warlocks, the issue is more unique. In vanilla, NPCs of any race could be a Warlock, but the type of mage they were usually depended on their race. Nords were almost always Ice Mages, and Dark Elves always Fire Mages. The mod fixes that to include more variation in their magical ability. Simply seeing a Dark Elf will mean nothing. They could be a Master of Conjuration, or Destruction, or any other magical path. Altogether and on its own, the mod offers a decent improvement to the game. When you stumble upon something rare, like a Bosmer Vampire or a female Orc in the Imperial Legion, you'll definitely wonder how they ended up where they did. They aren't just another plain old familiar face. They actually stand out and break up the sometimes monotonous gameplay surrounding the major factions. However, in our opinion, the mod's true potential is only unlocked with the addition of at least 1 or potentially 2 other mods. The first is a race overhaul mod, something like Imperious. This expands on and adds new abilities for the 10 races, with each one getting 3 new passives and 1 new active power. A mod like this can really help diversify each race, with clear-cut abilities that separate them. Whether it's an Argonian's ability to spit a corrosive jet that melts away armour, or a Dunmer's ability to call on their ancestors once a day to guide them in battle. Whatever the case, the mod combos extremely well with diverse Skyrim due to the fact that NPCs actually take advantage of these new powers. The second mod we highly recommend is Immersive Patrols. We've covered this in the past and is one of our favourite mods for Skyrim. It adds scheduled patrols for almost every major faction in the game, including those affected by diverse Skyrim. These patrols make Skyrim feel more alive, and it also adds the chance for warring factions to cross paths, and then sudden battles erupt for you to either watch or take part in. With both mods installed, the patrols will have a wider variety of NPCs to choose from. Without it, a patrol of the Imperial Legion will almost always be the same, but now you'll see the occasional group with an orc or a female soldier. So if you're thinking about picking up diverse Skyrim, we highly recommend you pick up at least one of these two mods. And that's the end of today's Spotlight. As always, be sure to leave endorsements on any mods you enjoy, check out g2a.com, and thanks for watching.